I was about to say good morning, everybody, then. It's good afternoon, isn't it? Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here today. Another BPCA webinar, Managing Bees in Pest Control Environments. Got a lot of people registered today. I think we've got 600, apparently. There's 184 of you with us at the moment. So I think as I'm doing the introduction, hopefully we'll get a few more. So again, I say this every time, but yeah, I'm speechless really on your your involvement and your engagement with us and the industry and what's going on, and trying to sort of seeing subjects that you think actually, yeah, I could do some updates on that. I mean, in terms of the webinar today, I'll do some housekeeping in a moment, but just as a bit of a what to expect really. So managing bees in pest control environments. I don't want anybody to I'll just go on to the agenda in a moment, but I don't want anyone to think that I'm going to be spending a lot of time on biology and behaviour and beekeeping and things like this, because that's not what today's about. There's separate training courses you can do for that, and training in itself. This isn't so much training. This is more, you engaging with what's going on out there. You've got the bee season, if you like, coming up. So a bit of a refresher on, right, what am I meant to be doing? What are the good ideas maybe, Natalie and BPCA can give me in terms of handling calls and, what the legal requirements are. So all this stuff helps you speak to your customers, doesn't it? And manage their expectations. And then you've got happy customers. So that's what we all want, isn't it? Of course, we do a bit of biology and behaviour and what bees do and different species, but I'm not an entomologist and I'm not a beekeeper that's got an avid interest in researching bees, but certainly some great information for you, just a bit of an update on, oh yeah, okay, that's what they do and where they go and how they nest, etc. But yeah, mostly focused on helping you out there when you're in the field, some ideas of how to deal with stuff on the go. All right, bit of housekeeping then. So before we start, questions and answers, we've got a section, you should better see it on your screen. There'll be a button either at the bottom or top or sides maybe, where you can ask questions. Now, I've seen one pop up already. Let's just have a little look. Are you going to cover in chimney nests? Sort of, Colin. Sort of. We'll see where we get. But on that note, so the Q&A section, these are questions obviously for me directly about the subject, things you want me to elaborate on or something I've said and you think, I don't really know what Natalie's going on about, or actually, Natalie, I disagree with what you said. I'm good with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. That's no problem at all. Because it's good discussions. That's what I want to happen today. I think my presentation bit, I'm not sure. I never really know how long I'm going to be, but I generally 45 minutes, and we should have a good 15 minutes at the end to be able to do some questions. So Q&A button for questions to me about the presentation. Now, if you have any technical issues, let's say you can't hear me very well, or you can't see me, or I disappear or something like that, use a chat section to, express your concerns or your problems you're having. I've got one of my colleagues, Kat, at the background there, just in case I do suddenly disappear, which has happened before. She'll pop up and just, guide you and just, ask you to bear with and keep in touch with me and see if we can get up and going again as quickly as possible. So yeah, technical problems, anything like that. If you want to have a chat amongst yourselves, obviously listen to me, listen to what I'm saying. That's the important thing. But yeah, have a chat amongst yourselves, or share some, experiences in there if you want to. It's great. CPD, we've got 1 point for today, as always. Webinars, they're 1 hour equals 1 point, easy peasy. If you pre-registered, which you all would have done, those points will be uploaded. I say automatically uploaded. It's a lot of work our end, but yeah, my colleagues, they work so hard in the office doing that for you. So if you've pre-registered, they'll be done. Prompt or BPCA registered, and then if you're watching this afterwards, so if you're looking at it where it's not live and you haven't registered for it, then you can still get a point. You just need to go and register that yourself. Okay, we can give you more guidance on that if you need it. And I can't see or hear you, so if you're chatting at the screen or shouting at me or anything like that, I can't hear you. So again, chat section for general chat or any technical problems, and then the Q&A section for specific questions that I'll get to at the end. Okay, great. Let's get going. I'm going to share my screen with you. Hopefully this all goes swimmingly well. I will make assumptions that things are working well unless I am told otherwise by my colleague Kat. So good. So managing bees in pest control environments. Let's have a look at what we're going to be covering today. Of course, it always takes a while to get going in the first instance. Push the button again. There we go. I just have to press it 7 times and it works. It's like a magic trick. It's fun. Okay, so like I said, the contents of this webinar, I say it may not be what you're expecting. Hopefully it is. But we are talking about bees and how you can manage calls and things like that. But it's not really about treatments. I will go into that more. Of course, you're like, well, we don't want to do treatments, do we? It's a lot about that, isn't it? And talking about why we don't, or maybe if we feel we have to, what are your options? So we will cover that, certainly. I've tried to think of, I've got an hour, it's not much time at all. So I've tried to think of the things that you really want to know about so that they're useful for you in the field, useful for you out there, your day-to-day inquiries and things like that. But we will cover species of bees that you may encounter. Now, there's a lot of them, as we know. Again, we'll go on to them in a moment. I'm not going to be going into a huge amount of detail, but there's sort of 3 main species that we may come across, and we'll cover that. That's my disclaimer. Just, it's not a lot of detail. I think the most important things to you that are going to be most useful to you in the field are the legal requirements and dealing with customers. Again, there's a few other bits we're covering, but as we go through, you'll see that. And anything I don't cover that you want to know about, ask me at the end. If I don't know the answer, I'll say, I'm not shy in saying I don't know the answer, as we all should be confident in saying, actually, I'm not sure about that. I'll go and find out for you. And I'll do that at the end if that's the case. Hopefully, we should be good. Right. Okay. So bees then, 250 species of bees in the UK. 24 of these are bumblebees. Only one is a honeybee, a European honeybee. Maybe surprising to some of you, maybe not. Again, you keen beekeepers out there, which I'm sure there's many of you on here, and you know a lot more about honeybees than I do. But we know there's just one species out there, and the rest are solitary bees. That's the basics of it, really. There's you can work it out with the maths, but there's sort of over 200 species of solitary bees, possibly more being discovered all the time. But the predominant amount are solitary bees, and they do get confused sometimes, don't they, with honeybees. We've put some images in here for you. Hopefully you can see that I've got a bit of a top screen there that won't seem to disappear. Oh no, we don't want to do that. Sorry about that, guys. Let me go back. This isn't working very well for me today. Apologies. Right. Okay. I'm back here again. So again, they all do look pretty different. And certainly with bumblebees, we all know that, they're pretty easy to distinguish from, solitary bees and honeybees generally, because they're fluffy and cute, aren't they? A lot of people say, but, a lot bigger. We'll talk a bit more about each species in the moment. But yeah, these are the ones that you'll see around your garden. When you'll get called out, maybe some of these species will be the ones you're calling out for. So we've got honeybee, the red mason bee is a solitary bee, as well as the tawny mining bee and the ivy bee. And of course, you've got the bumblebees here, which are self-explanatory. It's quite a few species there. The social, obviously, of course, they're social insects, except the solitary bee, of course, which is a surprise. The clue is in the name. Bumblebees and honeybees, they will have a social structure where they build nests. They have a queen and they have workers and defenders and so on and so forth. Solitary bees are the only ones that are not social. We'll go into a bit more information on that as we go forward. Honeybees, so only one species, again, slim, sandy thorax, black abdomen, gold amber bands. They're quite easy to distinguish. Now, there are some solitary bee species that we can, if we sort of see them sitting on a wall or on a flower, we think, we'll have to think about that. Just, is that a honeybee or is that a solitary bee? Now, I'm sure, again, there's a lot of you out there that, you'll know it straight off the back of your hand. And in terms of solitary bees and honeybees, I remember meeting a beekeeper out and about once when he was coming to inspect some strange activities going on around a drain cover, and he picked up one of the bees and said, well, this is how I test to see whether they're solitary bees or honeybees, and pushed the back end of the bee into his finger to see whether it'd sting him or not. So that's how we just distinguish whether it's a solitary bee or a mining bee or a honeybee, which is fun. I don't recommend that. That's not something I recommend doing, but I think you brave ones out there, you do. They've been domesticated for centuries, of course. We know that we get a lot of value with honeybees and the honey that they create and how we can use that. And honey, that it lasts for centuries. I think they do find, or have found stashes of honey in, Egyptian tombs. That sugar content just keeps it very pure and edible for a very, very long time. So, and we utilize that, of course. There's actually honeybees, because they've been domesticated for many centuries, it is quite rare to find a truly wild colony that's not maybe originated from a swarm of a cultivated colony. So, a true wild colony is actually quite hard to find. And the honey production as well, it varies in flavour, doesn't it? Depending on the bee's preferred flower. So, some organisations that, manufacture honey, they may set up hives or have, suppliers that have hives situated around a lavender field, for example. So then that honey will have a scent of lavender. You've got those more expensive ones like Manuka honey, which is apparently got all sorts of health benefits to it and is a lot more expensive. So, yeah, you can, depending on where hives are positioned, if you've got them in close proximity to certain fields or flowers, it can certainly make a good honey. So, honeybees, it's the base of it. It's, the nest size we know are really large compared to wasps. That's one of the signs sometimes when you're looking at some activity from a distance. If it's at the top of a tall building and you're just doing a quick survey and you look up and you think, I can't quite see them to be able to identify them. But you know what? Their activity, their behaviour, the quantity of them that are flying around up there says to me they're honeybees. I'm pretty sure they're honeybees, because 50,000 individuals, that's a lot, isn't it? I mean, I think the more common is sort of 20,000 is a more common number, but yeah, it can certainly get up to 50,000 in comparison to 5,000 maximum with sort of the wasps that we get in the UK. And again, they will overwinter. A queen can live for many years, depending on the environment. But I believe it's between sort of 5 and 8 years possibly could live. Really depends on the health of the hive, the situation where the nest is located, and whether or not they're able to do what they need to do successfully and healthily. And of course, they don't get any varroa mites or anything that's going to affect them. So yeah, honeybees, great things. We all love them. Bumblebees, so 24 species in the UK. Different species do prefer different nesting types. So, it might be in the ground, it might be in compost heaps, it might be in bushes, it might be in bird boxes. Some of them prefer sort of nesting lower ground. Some prefer to, nest a bit higher and say things like bird boxes. But their nests are normally about 500 individuals. We use this for all of the 5. It's very easy to remember, bumblebees. I think normally 200 is a more normal number, but can get up to about 500. So a lot smaller, they don't need as much space as, say, a honeybee, even from 500 individuals to 50,000, you can imagine the space that's needed and the different areas of where they're going to, pick their nests. I've actually seen it quite a lot in my garden this year. I'll be sitting there having a little relax in the garden when it's warm, and I can see the bumblebees sort of flying. They're just flying over the surface. I say there wasn't a lot of them. A couple of them every now and then would appear, and there'd be the queen would be hovering over the surface of the ground, trying to look for them. Basically, they're searching and seeking a suitable place for them to be able to, start up their nest. That's all they're doing this time of year. So it's quite nice to watch as well. We're kind of egging them on. Go on, find a place. Maybe not in, my right next to where I sit, possibly, hopefully, pray. But yeah, there's lots of spaces for them. Just got to find it. So that's what they're doing. If you're seeing that, a lot of customers reporting they're seeing, large bumblebees hovering around their garden. They're just trying to find somewhere to sit up homes. That's what we're seeing at the minute. It's more, rather than getting these calls, I don't think, unless anyone wants to tell me otherwise, maybe getting calls for honeybees, because of course if they've overwintered, this warm weather that we've got, and certainly had, and then went away again and sort of coming back again, it will certainly move them forward, speed up their metabolisms and encourage them to leave those nests and hives to start seeking. So that the honeybees certainly might have had calls for already for those overwintered nests that have sort of started flying again more actively. Whereas bumblebees and wasps and things like that, I don't think yet you would have had any calls. Maybe solitary bees. So yeah, bumblebees good. Yeah, don't generally overwinter. I've mentioned about honeybees. They will overwinter. They, because with honeybees, they create a lot of honey, and that's why we are able to, manufacture honey from them and not actually harm them, because that excess honey that they're making, we can use. But that's the sort of thing that they do to be able to overwinter successfully and keep their hive fed. Whereas bumblebees, they don't overwinter, so they don't need to create. They do create honey, but they don't need to create a vast amount to last them over winter. So of course they just make enough for them. And again, why we don't farm them, why we don't manufacture from them, because they don't create enough. We're not going to take the honey away from them. They don't have surplus there. Each species has a varying array of markings. Of course, we know, it might be different markings on the abdomen or the thorax or the tail. You've got yellow tails and orange tails and black tails and all sorts. There's lots of different species there. And again, like I said, this presentation is more about dealing with calls and what you can do and what you can't do, rather than talking about all the individual species of bees. But if that is something that you would want, let us know in the feedback. You'll get some feedback at the end if you do want to have, whether it be a webinar or something a bit larger, a bit longer, in terms of the detail on the species and the more detailed biology of them. Just let us know. We'll try and sort something out for you. That won't be me that's doing that, so you might all be very pleased about that. Okay, so yeah, and they're, like I said, they're large, fluffy, and clumsy, and some may say anyway. Great. So solitary bees, again, it's these. So two solitary bees in Britain are highly diverse. Now, as I said, there's 200 plus species. Obviously, I can't possibly cover them all. It's very generic in terms of things I'm going to talk about, but all of them have a variety of nesting habits. A number of species may nest aerially, so higher up, and usually in old beetle holes. Often see. So what they do is, some of the species will drill into the ground, drill into the soil, drill into the dirt, and they'll drill down maybe old beetle holes. Of course, if they can find a nest that's partly already done for them, they're going to utilize that hole. But if not, they can drill down themselves. And what they'll do is they will leave sort of some food substance, some sweet substance there for them, lay an egg, and then still that over with saliva-like substance, sort of mud, chewed leaves, things like that, resin of the sections of the leaves, and that they cut with their jaw, and then they can cover that hole up and move on to the next one. So that's how they do it in the ground. And these are more the aerially ones, probably the mining bees, the mason bees. You'll get them quite a lot. Again, I'll go into the more specific in the species in a moment, but generally these holes, can you see my cursor? Here we go. This perfect round hole here, we can buy these bee homes. I'm sure many of us have them in our garden, and even if you don't, just old rotten logs that are sat there that kind of have insects burrowing through them. These things can create great natural homes for them as well. I tend to leave these things there for insects to be able to live in amongst, not just solitary bees, all sorts of different might be moths or butterflies or other beetle insects. They all can utilize these things that are lying around our garden. But for solitary bees, certainly, creating these bee homes, solitary bee homes, where they can lay their eggs in here, seal it over, and then move on to the next one and lay another one. And you'll get multiple solitary bees going to these areas. It won't just be the one that takes over and kind of bullies the rest out or anything like that. So yeah, mason bee and mining bees. So let's just go into a little bit more on those. So mason bees, generally, you see them buzzing around external walls. Now, I probably had, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe a dozen jobs that I would get called out for these, and we'd always sort of leave them alone, because that is exactly what you need to do. So the main activity you will get is a call out for, I've got bees, hovering around the outside of my house. They're all over my wall. I'm really scared. I'm frightened about getting stung. So of course, a lot of the time you're better identify these things on the phone. Someone who's experienced with having these calls and going to see what the activity is and experiencing it. Just from the description on the phone, you'll probably be able to talk to them about mason bees, and say, look, this is what's happening. But certainly if you go along yourself, you'll see them hovering over that wall. They nest in cavities and wood, hollow stems and walls. So this is, again, you'll get them sort of away from homes. It's not always going to be on the south-facing wall of a home. But if say, for example, the render's a little bit loose, or the pointing's a bit loose, or possibly there's even drill holes that are there, been left behind from something that might have been hung on the wall and now is not. They'll take advantage of these things and take advantage of that weak masonry that's there. And they can overwinter in a cocoon, so this can happen on occasion. So we get that overwintering, and again, as individuals, they're not social insects, solitary bees. Again, it sort of says it in the name, doesn't it? And they don't make honey, and they don't sting. I mentioned at the beginning, didn't I, that telling the difference. I mean, of course, a keen eye or someone who's works with bees a lot, you'll easily be able to tell the difference between a solitary bee and a honeybee. But don't be ashamed if you struggle sometimes, or you look and think, oh God, is that? I'm pretty sure that's a solitary bee, or I'm pretty sure that's a honeybee, but I'm not quite sure. They can look very similar, as you can see from this picture here, but generally they're a bit fluffier, and they can be quite slim as well. But you'll get used to it. The more you see, the more you'll be able to take in and describe. But they do actually have a sting of some descriptions, but it's just not developed to a way that it bothers humans, that they can penetrate us. And I believe that's the case for all species. Again, there's 200 plus of them. I don't know all of the species, but if there is somebody on here that you've experienced actually solitary bees, there's certain species that can and has stung me, or then please share it in the Q&A bit, and I'll share it with everybody else, and it's part of that discussion and interaction between us all. But yeah, generally they don't sting. So again, your customers call you out for these things, and you just say, look, they're a wonderful thing. Okay, you might be worried about damage to the masonry or the brickwork. That's something you can address once these bees have gone. But what they'll be doing, similar to what I mentioned with the mining bees, they'll be drilling a hole into there, or using a pre-existing hole, and laying eggs in each individual one. If you've, again, you usually notice clouds of bees buzzing around in the front of brickworks. They're usually mason bees, and what they'll do is they sort of similar to a mining bee species, but you can tell them apart in their sort of boxy heads and large, powerful jaws. But again, you might need a microscope for this, or a magnifying glass, and you don't always have them to hand. So, but it's more the activity, isn't it? I think in pest control generally, we, a lot of our identification success is by looking at the activity, looking at what they do. Whether if it's an insect, look at how they fly, how they move. If it's a mammal or a rodent, it's the signs they've left behind, maybe, or it's not necessarily the actual specimen in front of you, and knowing what it looks like in comparison to something else and telling it apart. Of course, that is a big part of our identification skills, but it's also to do with the way they move, the way they breed and things like that. We can get all that knowledge together and have a good tool for identifying. But yeah, so mason bees, again, I'll go into a bit more in terms of treatments, but generally, this with any solitary bees, we don't treat, we just don't. Full stop. I can go into more on that. I probably will go into more on that. If I don't, you can by all means ask some questions at the end. But as simple as that, we don't. No need to. Again, I'll go on to what you can do, what you can advise your customers in a moment. Again, it's just some basics about the mining bees. Again, they're very similar to mason bees, apart from they prefer soil, a sort of sandy soil. They excavate that earth. They're a very diverse range. It says there 67 or so. This is just a particularly pretty one, a tawny mining bee, I believe. You might see these around quite commonly. So yeah, they're really effective pollinators as well. These mining bees, the majority of British solitary bees generally do nest in the ground. Like I said, some of them are mason bees and they will go for the higher up, but the larger percentage of them do like to nest in the ground, excavating their own nest. So what the female does, she builds a nest by herself. She'll choose sort of a suitable piece of ground in which to nest. So again, it's got to be easy for excavation and suitable for her. And if one solitary bee finds that yeah, this is pretty suitable for me. You can guarantee more will come along. And again, I've had quite a few, call outs in the past where, you've turned up to a patch of grass or soil where there's just sort of, solitary bees swarming all over the top of the top layer of this ground, and that's because it's lovely and suitable for them, and they all agree on that. And again, they're not solitary, they're not working together necessarily, they're not building a nest together, they've just all individually gone, oh yeah, that's a good site over there, I'm going to go and take advantage of it. So the female will use her body to dig out a nesting chamber in the ground. She adds a bit of pollen to the chamber, which is often moistened with nectar. She lays the egg, and then she seals off that section of the nest before moving on to the next chamber. And that's how it goes. So it's very, very different, isn't it, to honeybees and bumblebees. This solitary chamber where she lays that egg, seals it off, and moves on. So there's not much tending to it, really not much tending at all, if any, apart from that initial process. Again, like I said, in suitable nest sites, you often find aggregations of nests, lots of them together. There are also a number of species in Britain that nest in the ground but create turrets over their nests. These are often quite distinctive, but again, they're doing the same thing. And in terms of your approach when you get these call outs, it's going to be the same, regardless of the individual species, and again, that's why I haven't spent really too much time at all on talking about individual species, because solitary bee is a solitary bee. We don't deal with them lethally. It's more advice and guidance and reassurance for customers, and again, similar with bumblebees, honeybees, maybe a bit more to do there, but we'll go into that now. Okay. Another common question that we get, still from new pest controllers into the industry, even people who've been in the industry for a long time, just say, look, Natalie, can I just confirm, bees aren't protected, aren't they? Because I keep hearing it from my customers that they are, and I just need to refresh myself on are they not? And they're endangered, but they're certainly not protected. Endangered is an important word because they're endangered. We that says it all. Okay, they're not protected. That's not a piece of legislation that says thou shalt not kill bees, but they are endangered. And whether it's a social suicide or whether it's possibly legal, which I'll come on to in a minute, issue, then we don't want to be doing what treating them lethally. So they're endangered but not protected. So yeah, you may say, surely there's something. And the way I always look at it is that in terms of bees being protected, you've got to ask yourself, that protection that might ever be offered one day would be, this is just me thinking outside the box and kind of getting you to think about, things in a different way, is that bees are amazing, but they sting. At the end of the day, apart from solitary bees, bumblebees, honeybees, they sting. And there can be humans that can have a fatal effect to just one sting, maybe multiple, but that anaphylactic shock that you can get from a sting, as I said, it can be fatal, or even if it's not fatal, it can have massive effects on somebody's health, especially if they're vulnerable, the elderly or the young, and then obviously those that are allergic to bee stings, the different chemicals and components that are within it, of course wasps as well, but talking about bees here. So, if we were to protect bees and say, right, no one's allowed to touch bees ever again, can't do anything with them, can't move them, can't do anything, because they're protected, like birds, for example, then what happens if we get a nest that, is outside the entrance of a care home or outside the, play area of an infant school, and it's during, it's middle of summer and it's boiling inside, we'd have to leave them there. And certainly with honeybees, as we said, nests can be in place for a very long time. So is it a case, a school would have to close down, because there's a bee nest there? Maybe some of you think, well, yeah, so what? Yeah, we want them protected. But that's the thing, they can be a danger. So there are situations when they do need to be dealt with. The other bit in terms of the legal entity, as I mentioned the agenda, I'm going to talk about the legal side of it. yeah, let's talk about pesticide labeling. And ooh, I hear you say that's exciting. Now, listen, I can't possibly know what all labels of insecticides say exactly. There's too many of them. There's different products coming out, and I don't talk about BPCA when we're doing these things. We're not going to talk about trade names with you. If you ask me any questions about, particular products, I won't be able to elaborate on it, but certainly maybe active ingredients, they're the important things in terms of what work. But the other important thing is the label. And of course, just as a quick note and refresher, the label is the law. No way around it. You don't follow that label, then you are breaking the biocidal product regulations or the control of pesticides regulations, depending on what product it is and what stage they're in terms of switching over to different legislation, of course, of Brexit still. But generally, biocidal product regulations, UK, and the control of pesticides regulations. They're the if you use a product to treat a pest where that pest is not mentioned on the label as it's authorized for this pest, then you're breaking those label conditions. I have heard people say about, well, what about labels that say flying insects on them? Bees are flying insects. Well, if you want to put yourself open to that whole Pandora box of what could happen, and again, social suicide or otherwise legal, if it ended up in court, that's where they'll debate whether or not you could have used that product or not. But for us, the flying insect statement is not strong enough. It's not supportive enough of using it for bees. So if it doesn't say you can use it for bees on the label, you can't use it. Now, I'm 99.9% sure, 100% sure, but just in case of something that's popped out over the last few hours or days, there are no labels that say you can use it for bees. Again, there's talk of things maybe coming about. If someone feels they've found something, by all means, stick it up and we'll have a chat about it, and I can advise whether or not, or be careful because I think you're reading that wrong. But there's no label. So using insecticides for the treatment of bees, well, there isn't any, because the label says you can't. There aren't any labels that say you can. Again, I think that'll get some people thinking and get some people going, oh, well, actually, Natalie, please do in the Q&A bit. Absolutely happy to talk about that a bit more. Okay. Bit about bees there. So in the news, just quick, I can't believe how quickly time goes, I'm going to go through these bits a little bit quicker. So again, I've got some time for questions. I've got 11 questions on there already. So you're obviously eager. So just as an example in terms of pesticide use, and this is 2008, this in the news example, seems like a while ago. But I do also believe that that's because we're a lot more responsible now, and we don't get occurrences of fines and things, but also maybe the press haven't picked it up, and there's a lot more out there. But in 2008, the case was investigated under the Wildlife Incident Investigation Scheme, following the discovery of thousands of dead bees in a beekeeper's hive. The analysis of these dead bees by WEES showed that they had died from exposure to bendiacarb. Mr. Allison, he's the guy who had administered the treatment with bendiacarb, had used it, containing, except again, trade names there, which I won't mention, but we all know what bendiacarb product that was, to kill feral bees nesting in a tree. That's what happened. He used bendiacarb to put into a tree. Now, some of us might think there's problems just there anyway. But anyway, and following an investigation into the deaths of thousands of honeybees carried out under the Wildlife Incident Investigation Scheme and DEFRA, he was charged, that he had failed to take all reasonable precautions to protect the health of human beings, creatures and plants. It wasn't just about the bees, using bendiacarb in the tree, with probably not much care for who's around or what's around or who might be doing something, because I think the tree was actually due to be cut down as well, and that's why they wanted these bees sorted out. Also, the other reason they charged him was he was not competent in the use of the product. Again, people ask me, oh, Natalie, what's the legal requirement of use of insecticides? Of course, don't need to talk about rodenticides, that's another day, but insecticides. And I say, well, it's competency. What is that? But they do expect something, some sort of training or update. And again, level 2 qualifications, or, safe use of insecticide courses or something. You've got to, if you ended up in court, you've got to be able to go, I'm competent. Here we go. This is what shows I'm competent. And also, again, didn't have the necessary training or instructions. That was another thing that they charged him on, and had failed to use the required safety clothing or eye protection. So it was a lot about himself, but also the fact that he had criminally damaged, somebody else's beehive, because as we know, those robber bees, I say as we know, I don't make assumptions on what you know here, so apologies about that. But with honeybees, when they have a nest there, if you treat it with a chemical and kill that nest, and then leave it there, and there's still a hole that's open where other bees can fly in, robber bees will fly in from other hives and think, oh, look at all this honey, lovely, and they'll collect it up and do what they do. And even the grubs they can take away to feed to their hives to be able to, it's easy food, why not? So of course, you've got all this insecticide in there, you're going to affect those bees, but they don't die straight away, do they, from bendiacarb, the dust? They'd fly it back to the nest, and and spread that around the hive that's being cultivated. So again, that can be seen as criminal damage in a way, because you're affecting somebody else. So hence why you did have to, sealing up holes, and so you can't get access to it. But we don't use insecticide, do we? Hopefully none of you do for bees, but I'll be interested to see what you think on that. But that was a case back in 2008. Okay. So, the one thing I want you to think about really is rather than asking the question to me or anyone else, can I kill these bees? Or your customer saying, can you kill these bees for me? You kind of want to be really thinking, why should I kill these bees? What's it gonna, why would I do that? You want to follow a hierarchy of controls, as we do with everything else. Okay, it might not be a legal requirement because we can't find the law that says it, but certainly in terms of use of pesticides anyway, there is a hierarchy. You should always consider non-toxic methods. So with bees, the non-toxic method, if you really have to remove them, if you've got one that's outside a care home entrance, and it's there's lots of vulnerable people around that could potentially have a fatal effect from a sting, and you've got to get rid of those bees, then you go for the non-lethal, the removal. Okay, they're beneficial and fantastic, and we should leave them alone. However, the inevitable cause, this is advice open for discussion, of course. So these are a few options for you to think about when you get these phone calls with, I've got bees, whether it be, solitary or bumble or honey. You could simply say, sorry, I don't do bees. And for BPCA members, there's a BPCA leaflet, which is why we're leaving you be. Pun totally intended. And it's something you can leave with customers, or you can send through the post, or you can email, whatever you want to do with it, to say, look, don't do bees. They're beneficial. You give them a bit of the background. You can leave them with this why we're leaving you be leaflet, and it gives them that extra reading. Sometimes it's a lot for them to take in on a phone call. You may be particularly busy, so you just give them the highlights, but say, look, I'll pop over a leaflet to you, or I'll put one through your door, or you might be there in front of them and you'll have a load of them in your van possibly that you'll be able to give it to them. And it just gives them that extra reading for when you've gone, to be able to understand why you're leaving them be, and encourage them not to call somebody else who is happy to go and just, do what they do with them and get rid of them lethally. We don't want that, do we? So take advantage of the business as well. So learn to collect swarms. Why not? I was on a talk the other week with on a forum. Had a guy talking about from Bee Watch. So I was just trying to remember the company, the Bee Watch. It was talking about collecting swarms, and I didn't get involved with it, when I first started in pest management, but I did go around with someone that did deal with bee swarms, and we'd see them on a tree branch, kind of gathered around, a bit like the picture here, kind of gathered around a tree branch, a bit thinner than this. Just went in there with a box, put a box underneath them, and bashed the bejesus out of this twig or stem from a tree where the bees were clumped around, and they kind of just whoop, into the box, dropped off, obviously gradually. And the important thing is that the queen's in there, isn't it? Because when you do that, if the queen is in amongst that clump of bees, and they'll all follow and eventually go into that box. You leave it there for a bit. Once it comes to nightfall, when they're all a bit quieter and calmer, you can then take that box away. It's quite straightforward, but you need to be okay with doing it. So again, swarms, you're going to get calls for swarms. So, maybe learn to do it yourself. And if not, of course, you've got British Beekeepers Association, if it is a swarm. But certainly, bumblebees, if you've got a nest, again, you can leave them alone all the time. I don't think I can remember a time when I thought, oh yeah, we need to remove these bees. They're causing a problem here. I've always been able to just leave them. But if you do get that situation where they're nesting, in a bird box that's quite close to a house or something, an entrance where the possibility of a sting, again, they're pretty docile and calm. We don't necessarily have to worry. But if there is that odd situation when you think, yeah, I think we do need to remove this nest, then again, you can, if it's in a bird box, quite easy, isn't it? Pop it off, pop it over there. Of course, they'll have to learn that flight path again, but it's a lot better than treating them lethally. And then, if they're dug into a ground somewhere or compost or soil, you can dig them up. But again, you need a bit of training on that. Today is not the time for me to talk about that. But yeah, absolutely, why not learn to do these things so you can deal with them if needed. For solitary bees, usually maintenance, soil point, whether it's of the soil or pointing of a building. So if you've got an area that bees particularly like, maybe year after year, what your customer says to you, look, I get these year after year, I kind of need them to go. I don't want them back next year because it creates problems with, I have customers coming in that are frightened to walk across that area because of the bees, because, they're not all going to have knowledge of what they are and that they're fine and harmless. So they want them done. So the thing is to do is wait until the season is through, and then try and do something with that soil and make it less attractive to them. And again, with pointing of properties and making that pointing a bit more stable and less prone to these bees being able to burrow the way through. And we do have BPCA members that do specialist removal as well. So with honeybees, I've got a honeybee example. At the beginning, I was going to mention that, a lot of the next bits coming up are going to be about honeybees, because I think they're the trickiest ones. They're the ones that we get the most, that cause, the most concern in terms of we really need to get rid of these, but we're not sure how to. Again, bumblebees normally can be left alone, and certainly solitary bees can normally be left alone. I say normally, they are always left alone. Whereas honeybees, I think, are the more common ones that will, percentage wise, be higher up on the percentage of we need to do something about them. They need to not be where they are, whether it's due to building works that are going on, or whether they've just got to a size where they're starting to cause some major issues. There's more occasions, I think, where you're going to need to deal with honeybees. So yeah, again, we have BPCA members that do that. Again, get in touch with us if you want us to send you any of these details if you've got more complicated issues. Again, I'm going to go into a scenario in a moment, kindly supplied by a BeeWise member in a moment. I'll tell you a bit more about BeeWise in a second. But that's the gist of it. The phone calls come in. Yes, you can say, look, sorry, I don't do bees. That's my ethos, my company policy. We just don't deal with bees. Here's some information for you. Just leave them alone. Can you leave them alone? And if it gets to the point where you feel that something does need to be done, then you can get a specialist in through BPCA. You could, if it's a swarm, because obviously a swarm is different to an established nest, you could learn to collect swarms, possibly. I don't think it'll take too long. You just need to have the confidence with them, and then have somewhere that you can relocate them, of course. And, you might have hives yourself, but I think that's an individual decision to make, and whether it's something you want to partake in, or maybe you've got a colleague that does it. But yeah, talk to them, educate them. Again, solitary bees, just tell them the facts. By all means, give them our number, and we'll happily sort of support you on what you're telling them, and be able to help you with that. So everyone needs, again, I'm just going over it again. Is there ever a need to lethally treat bees? Again, bumblebees, no. I can't think of a scenario ever where I've ever needed to. Honeybees, we're going to discuss a bit more coming up. And solitary bees, again, same as above in terms of bumblebees, just no. And, again, you've got to think, well, pesticides, are there any? We keep talking about pesticides and all. Can we use this product? Can we use that product? It might be a non-toxic product, might be diatomaceous earth. Can we use this? Can we use that? Well, have a look at the label. What does it say on the label? And think about how things work. And really, is there a need? And really, honeybees, would you all agree, are probably really the only bee that, actually thinking about it, you might consider treating them lethally if they can't be removed, which they always can. I think 99.9% of the time they can always be removed. It's more cost, isn't it, that people worry about. But I'm going to go on in a moment with, okay, do you know what, that tiny percentage, if there was a product that said, yeah, you can treat bees with these, no worries, what's the practical implementation of that? And I'll go into that right in a moment. So honeybees, then, talking from experience and from what other members, sent me and talked to me about and educated me on. Of course, honeybees have huge colonies and a large comb structure, lots of honey and lots of larvae. If you kill the worker bees and the queen, what happens to that nest and comb? Nothing. Stays there, doesn't it? Stays there. So, scenario. So Martin Belcher, he's so Beewise is a special interest group that BPCA run. It's not a committee or a board. It's a lot more fast paced than that. We're a special interest group. We come up with ideas. We do for the industry. That why we didn't treat your bees leaflet. That was created by Beewise. We all got together on a Zoom call. Actually, it might be in face-to-face, I think, when we've done that before COVID. Yeah. And decided, we could do with something that, members can have and give to their customers, so that, when they're walking away, those customers aren't hopefully going to call someone else to come and spray their bees. And that was what we come up with. So Martin is a member of Beewise, and he kindly said that I could share this little picture presentation on some jobs, a job that he'd done, but also it gives me a visual cue to be able to show you why there's a problem with, even if you had a product that said, yeah, it's fine, go and kill bees with this product, why you shouldn't. Okay, so here you can see it's feral bees took up residence last year in a unique Victorian home, but of course they were there for a long time, and they soon started causing massive issues. Now they were in this, if you can see my arrow, I think you can. They're just here. This is the inside of the window. You can see all the bees on the window here. And then once Martin got the crowbar out and hammer out, took up this section of board in here, and there we go. You can already start to see the comb here. So you're going to have honeycomb, and you're going to have the larvae section of the larvae comb, where again I've got some more close-up pictures. You better see that in a moment. Took off some more panels here. Again, you've got the comb just there and there. There's some more going down into a void here, disappearing into the ether. There's some more. He hasn't got this panel off yet, but there's some more over here. Again, if we go back to that first picture, oh, not that one. You're looking at it from the outside here, and so if you're seeing bees coming out of the bottom of the windowsill maybe, or the top of the window out of a hole up here, what are you treating when the nest is all the way down here and the comb is hanging all the way at the bottom of here? What are you going to spray something in a little hole there and hope that it gets the whole of the nest? It's not realistic, is it? Again, you look at this window, if the hole's outside this window somewhere and they're in and out, and you puff something in here or spray something in a hole, how is it going to get to here? It's not going to do anything, is it? It's not going to get to the nest. You might kill some workers. You might think they're going to take a load of it in for them, and spread it around. But you've got to picture the how it's located, where this nest is actually located in that cavity. You don't know from a hole that you've got some bees. I might have said wasps earlier. I meant bees coming in and out of a hole. How do you know where the nest is in location to that hole? It could be a metre or two away from where they're actually coming out. They're crawling along a beam or a cavity to get out of that hole. The nest may not even be near it, so you're just pumping God knows what into a void. You don't know, you can't see. They're not like wasps, where have got a bit more of a simple structure. There's a it can be very complicated. in terms of what they do. So there's a few more images here. There's Martin there backing up the bees. So obviously took out the various sections and would back up the bees. And this is, again, it's not something I've sort of been involved with, but they'll obviously go into a hive here, which he intends to be taken away. I'll just go forward one picture so you can see what it does with it. Takes the comb out, straps them up, and then plops them into a box that he can carry away. And of course the bees are in there, backing them all up. Got rid of it all. But you can see here the larvae as well. So, you've got these larvae cells. So a few slides ago, I said to you, well, if you're going to treat a honeybee's nest lethally with something, again, what's left behind? These larvae are going to stink. I mean, I've done it before. I've taken, a wasp nest, for example, and I thought, this wasp nest looks lovely, and put it in a little bucket and thought, well, I could show people that. Give it a few weeks, the blooming thing stinks. It's vile. It's sort of decaying, dying things, and that's what the larvae would do. It can get to that point. So you've got issues with that, and the honey that's left behind. This honey is not just going to magically disappear. It can last for a very, very long time, and if it's not being tended to, it can start seeping out as well, and possibly causing more issues with the going down the side of walls, seeping out, causing concerns in that way. Getting robber bees, getting other insects trying to get in and access it. You might also, with once it decays a bit more, things like wax moth, could get secondary infestations from leaving this stuff behind. So you've got to remove it. We're just treating with insecticide. It's just not something you should ever consider. You've got to remove the whole thing. You've got to remove it. And people need to accept that, yes, it can be high cost sometimes, but if a brick was to fall through your conservatory roof, you would have to pay to have that done. It's building maintenance. And it's a similar thing with bees. If you're fortunate enough, you've got a beehive that's causing you a problem in your cavities, it's part of your building maintenance. It's part of your responsibility when you own a building to have them removed. And it's not going to be 20 quid. They've got to accept it, and it's up to you to be able to educate them on that, and we can help you with it, certainly. But it's how it is. It's how it is. If they have to be dealt with and they can't be left, and they need to be gone, then removal is the key. Afterwards, so once the void had been cleared, this is when it had all been cleared and all the comb had been taken out and the bees backed up. It was then filled to try and prevent a new colony. I think there's some spray as well that you can get to, because it's sort of spray in the area to take away that scent, to take away that pheromone that hopefully won't attract other bees. And obviously you can try and seal holes around the outside here, but I think I mean, it's an insect, it's gonna get in a tiny hole, so it can be tricky. But if you can make it less attractive and less space for a new colony or a new fresh swarm to go, that looks like a nice place to nest, and it smells pretty nice as well, the better it would be for your customer. And again, this is just another example to reiterate, really, and how can a treatment with a powder or liquid eradicate a honeybee hive? So I've mentioned about accessing it generally. I'm just going to go on to the slide here. You can see it. So let's take this for example. It's a typical call you may get. Let's pretend all the tiles are on this property, and you're looking up, going, yeah, they're bees. I can tell by the way they're swarming or moving around. Again, it's flight paths and things. You can, when you've done it for a while, you can just tell what are bees and what are wasps from a distance. But you think, yeah, I'll get some insecticide in there. I'll go in the attic and spray it, or I'll put, I think I've got something I can use. It says something on the label that I'm happy to use it for bees. That aside, which is a problem, which we've discussed, of course, technically, how's it going to work? So, where's the queen? The important thing is you kill the queen here. You could kill half the workers in this nest, but as long as the queen survives, then all is well, all is fine. So the queen could be all the way down in the bottom of these combs here. I'm going to go back one slide. Where's my mouse gone? Here it is. Here, you look at the size of this. This is 7 feet long, this image here. The comb stretched across the beams, 7 feet. So let's say, you've got multiple layers of this and you've got a hole on the outside of the tile. You think, I can spray a bit of insecticide in there. Where's it going to go? How's it, look at the size of it. The queen could be over here somewhere and you're pumping something in over there. I mean, it's just not technically going to work. And then you're going to have not only an unhappy BPCA, but also an unhappy customer. And there's just no need. And technically it's very tricky to do. And what's left behind, there's just so many reasons not to do it. Even if you had a product that was like, yeah, no worries, go and treat the bees. Then it's tricky. I've just realised I've got 26 questions and I'm 5 minutes away from when I'm supposed to finish, so I'm nearly done, I promise, and I'll try and get a couple of questions. But yeah, to reiterate again, the practicability of it, I'm doing all this to say, look, it's specialist. Don't just think because I'm a pest controller I can deal with bees. Removal, relocation is the key. If you're going to deal with it, it's not just about the ethics of it as well. It's not just we don't want to kill them. Of course, it's a big part of it, but it's also about technically it's very difficult and probably won't work, and you'll have an unhappy customer and an unhappy hive, and no one wants that. Again, I went on that picture there, but just as a summary then, so get a good identification tool, educate your customers and be clear, because of course you don't want a customer walking away thinking, well, he or she had no idea. It was all right, just said sorry, don't do that, and left me to it. Have a plan of how you're going to approach these calls that's going to be efficient and effective for you, quick, but with all the information you need. Again, grab the leaflet. Why we're leaving you be. It's quite a nice looking leaflet as well, and people appreciate it. If you really do have something that you've got to remove and relocate, then get someone in who knows what they're doing with it, and then learn it. I'm sure they'd be happy to work with you and show you how to do it. And if you've got some good building skills and knowledge and experience, then I think you're halfway there. And then again, contacting a specialist with it. So I'm gonna questions coming up. It says challenge me on the scenario where you think bees need treating lethally. That was my little challenge to you. I've got 28 questions there. I've got 4 minutes left. Now I'm going to go over by a couple of minutes. I don't think anybody will be too upset about that, but I can guarantee you I'm not going to get to all of your questions. So what I'll do, as always, again, those of you that have been here before, you've seen that, I stay true to my word. I'll print off the questions I don't get to. I'll type the answers and we'll get them out on an email. I say print them off. I don't mean literally print them off. You know what I mean? Put them in a format that I can send out to you all and get some answers in there. And again, it gives me opportunity to be able to get other expert advice if there's anything I'm not sure about. So Dean, we made a comment here. Hi, Natalie. Having read the products magazine from Killgym, I see no insecticide that is cleared for use against bees. Very good news. Has this now been resolved with categories for use? So I'm not sure what you mean there, Dean. But yeah, absolutely. There's no insecticide cleared for the use of bees. Absolutely. Someone messaged me a while ago saying they think they heard some grapevine talk about something being authorized for bees. But even if they did, do you know what? Still not interested. Still not. I mean, personally, and BPCA's point of view, again, I've gone into all that. Okay, Andrew Purcell. So thinking about honeybees in building structures where there is no practical alternative to treatment, what products now have label approval to allow them treatment? I think we answered that one, Andrew. There are none. Again, whether you want to, yourself decide whether flying insects means you can, then that's down to the individual to put themselves at that risk level, if you like. But certainly from our point of view, there are no products. And again, technically, how would that work anyway? That was quite an early question, I think, as well, Andrew. So I think we did, you got that in there just as we started. So I hopefully answered that on the way through. So Derek, can we use non-insecticide, i.e. freezing, if appropriate and absolutely necessary, and any advice on treatment apart from the obvious routes? Again, I think that was an early on question, Derek. I think we've talked about most of that in terms of freezing and heat and things like that. I mean, heat for honeybees, we're talking about that. Blimey, you'll have a right mess on your hands, I don't think, because it'll melt most things, and yeah, you'll have a cascade or a torrent or a waterfall of all sorts coming down on you. So not that, but yeah, freezing. I mean, of course, technically a bee would die if you put it through or down to a cold enough temperature. Of course it would, but again, it's getting access to it. There's not necessarily any authorization for freezing. It's it's like heat treatment. You can kill insects by using heat treatments if you can access them, if you can administer it in a way that's going to access them. And I think with honeybees, it's just again, I'm talking about honeybees here, it's not going to be practical. Let's have a look. So do you have any problems with carpenter bees in the UK? I think, Julia, we do get carpenter bees. Again, it's so sort of usually out the way, to be honest. I think it's one of those things that, we have carpenter bees, absolutely. But we just never really need to deal with them. We don't they don't become a problem. Again, bumblebees, I've challenged everyone to give me a scenario where, bumblebees have been an issue and they've had to move them or do something with them. Again, some of the things you might have done might have been in the days when we did have stuff that was labelled for bees. That's fine. I'm not going to be, accosting anyone or chasing anyone down if they said in the past they've treated bees lethally. It is what it is. But, certainly now things are a lot different. Can we track a honeybees to locate the nest in the field? Denny, wow, yeah. So I know with hornet thing going on at the minute, there's some tracking going on and fancy technology being used to be able to track a hornet flying from somewhere that someone's seen them, caught it, and been able to put a tracker on them to take them back to the nest, because obviously the not common hornets gone. What brain has completely gone. Asian hornets, that's it. The species we don't want over here. They're certainly doing with that. But with honeybees, I'm sure it exists, but do we use it? No, certainly not in the industry. So Martin here has made a comment who we pictured in the scenario there. Thank you, Martin. Again, you're listening. So he said that masonry bees are informing you that your mortar is in poor condition. So that's a much better wording than I use, Martin. That's what I was trying to get at. But yeah, the mortar within your walls is in poor condition. So actually, say thank you to them and go, right, nice one. I'll get that sorted. Thank you. Fab. Let's have a look. Does the mining bee sting? Mentioned that. So they don't sting, again, unless there's anyone on here that disagrees. I think I've got, I'm going to have to do one more question then go, guys, because I think we're 2 minutes over anyway. But I do promise I'll get out the typed answers on here. So, Natalie, can I ask how the BPCA interpret the phrase on labels that state harmful to bees? I mean, I don't know if there's much interpretation of that. It's harmful for bees. So I know what you mean. There's products that are insecticides that, don't have bees on the label, but it might say flying insects. And then in another safety section, it says, harmful to bees. My interpretation is you don't use it. You can't use it for bees. I mean, what you've got to do with anything is, okay, harmful bee, what it says on the label, let's pretend, let me zoom myself to a court case where someone's trying to prosecute me for using a product to kill bees. How are they going to do that? Right. The prosecution is going to go, right, Clive or Natalie or whatever, this product you use, it says harmful to bees, and it doesn't say anywhere on the label you're allowed to use it for bees. You might argue, it says flying insects on it, but it says harmful to bees, but you've used it anyway on bees, so we're going to get you. That's the way to look at it. It's worst case scenario, and if someone was going to try and prosecute you on it, that's what it says. So that's the definition for me, or the interpretation. I am going to have to leave it there. I'm really sorry. We have 28 questions still to go. I think some of them are probably comments. I think one person asked me to get on with it. I don't know what that means. Was I being particularly boring at one point? Yeah, maybe. Happens. is what it is, isn't it? I'm not for everyone. But yes, I will send out the questions, or the answers to questions, my best way that I can, offer some links if we can. But thank you all for being here. It was lovely to see you all. Hopefully it's lovely and sunny where you are, and yeah, please join us for the next one. We'll be doing the webinars throughout the summer. We normally sort of events and things we keep to a low key, but I think webinars, it's an hour once a month. You can log on when you're in your van and yeah, join me and yeah, keep me entertained. All right, guys, well, have a great day. Thank you for being with us, really appreciate it, and we will see you soon. Take care now.